market street woke early every day, just as the sun began to color the sky in soft shades of gold. Stalls opened one by one, sellers shouted greetings, and children hurried to school with bags on their shoulders. In one corner near the entrance of the market was a small tea stall. It was nothing grand, just a wooden table, a bench, some cups, and a kettle that never stopped steaming. But people loved it because of the woman who stood behind it. Her name was Fatima. Fatima had a kind smile that never failed to reach her eyes, though the eyes themselves carried a quiet tiredness, the kind that comes from years of hard work and unspoken worries. She lived in a small house not far from the market, and she ran the stall from morning until evening. Her tea was simple but warm, and her words always softer than the drink itself. For many, it was not only tea they came for, it was comfort. Beside her was her daughter Aisha. Aisha was only 7 years old, full of life and curiosity. She often carried a bunch of marigolds in her hands, plucked from a neighbor's garden who kindly let her take them. She liked to play with the flowers, but she also liked giving them away to people who bought tea from her mother. The flowers made the stall look brighter, and Fatima always said that Aisha was the reason people returned, not the tea. Life was not easy for them. Fatima's husband had left years ago, and since then she had raised Aisha alone. There was no extra money, no big savings, but they survived. Still, Aisha often noticed things. She noticed how other children walked with both parents, how mothers and fathers laughed together as they bought vegetables or sweets. She noticed how her mother sometimes sat quietly at night, staring at the wall after a long day of work, her smile gone when no one was watching. These things planted small thoughts in Aisha's young mind. She wanted her mother to smile all the time, not only when serving tea. One morning, the market air was filled with the smell of fresh bread and roasted peanuts. Fatima was serving cups of tea to her usual customers when a new face appeared. He was a tall man in a simple shirt, carrying a small bag over his shoulder. He had calm eyes, and though his clothes were plain, there was something about the way he stood. Quiet, steady, as if he belonged anywhere he went. He asked for a cup of tea politely, paid, and then, instead of rushing away like most customers, he stayed. He sat on the old wooden bench, sipping slowly. Aisha watched him carefully. Children have a way of noticing what adults do not. She saw how he placed his cup gently, how he looked at her mother while she spoke to another customer, and how he smiled, not a big smile, but a small, respectful one. Fatima soon returned to the bench, and the man started talking to her. At first it was about the tea, how good it tasted. Then he asked about the spices she used. That led to talk of books, schools, and the town. His name was Imran. He had recently moved to the town to work as a teacher at the local school. Teaching, he explained, was his passion. He liked sharing knowledge, shaping young minds, and learning from them too. Fatima listened politely, answering when he asked questions about the market and about the town's traditions. She was not used to strangers who stayed for long conversations, but she found his tone calm and his words thoughtful. Aisha, sitting nearby, felt something she could not name at first. Then it became clear in her heart. This man was different. He was not like the hurried customers who drank tea and left, or the ones who spoke loudly and never looked back. This man was gentle. He was kind. He treated her mother with respect. In her small heart, Aisha began to believe something special. This man would be perfect for her mother. That night, as Fatima prepared a simple dinner of rice and lentils at home, Aisha sat quietly, watching her. The thought grew in her mind. Why couldn't her mother be happy like other women in the market? Why couldn't she have someone to share her life with? Aisha thought of Imran's calm smile and the way her mother had laughed softly while talking to him. It was a laugh she had not heard in a long time. Children dream in simple ways. Aisha did not think about all the rules or fears adults carried in their hearts. She only thought about what made sense. She wanted her mother to smile. She wanted her to have someone to lean on, someone who could make her less lonely at night. And so the little girl decided she must do something. She must help her mother and Imran come closer. Aisha lay awake in bed, the moonlight peeking through the window. She hugged her pillow and whispered to herself, "Tomorrow I will ask him. I will ask him to marry my mother." The idea made her both nervous and excited. She imagined Imran smiling and agreeing, and she imagined her mother's face lighting up with joy. The thought made her heart beat faster. She smiled in the dark, drifting into sleep with hope filling her small chest. The next morning, the market was as lively as ever. Fatima busied herself at the stall, while Aisha clutched her marigolds as usual. But today, her eyes were searching. She waited eagerly for the familiar figure of Imran. When he finally appeared, carrying his small bag and walking steadily toward them, Aisha felt her courage shake for a moment. What if he laughed at her? What if her mother became angry? But then she remembered her mother's tired eyes and how she wanted to change that. Courage returned like a flame. Imran greeted Fatima politely, ordered his tea, and sat down. Aisha stood nearby, watching. She wanted to speak, but her voice stuck in her throat. Her little hands trembled as she twisted the flowers. She thought of writing a note instead. Something simple. She had learned to write neat sentences at school, and she wanted to use that skill for something big. Later, while Imran sipped his tea, Aisha pulled out a folded piece of paper from her pocket. She had written it the night before with all her heart. In her careful letters it said, "Sir, are you single? My mom is perfect for you. Please marry with her." She had drawn a little sun at the top and two stick figures holding hands, one taller, one shorter. Her heart pounded as she held the paper close, but she didn't give it to him yet. Instead, she hid it behind her back. She watched as Imran finished his tea, spoke kindly to her mother, and stood to leave. She knew her chance was slipping. With all the bravery her little soul could gather, Aisha stepped forward and held out the folded note with both hands. Imran paused, surprised. He bent down to her level, his gentle eyes meeting hers. "For me?" he asked softly. Aisha nodded, her cheeks turning red. He smiled, took the paper, and opened it. His eyes moved slowly over the words. For a moment he did not speak. Then, instead of laughing or scolding, he gave Aisha a smile so warm it made her feel safe. He folded the paper again and placed it carefully in his pocket. "Thank you, little one," he said kindly. "This is the most honest note anyone has ever given me." Aisha's heart leaped with joy. She could not tell if he agreed or not, but his gentle reply made her believe she had done the right thing. She ran back to her mother's side, trying to hide her excitement. Fatima looked at her with curious eyes but said nothing. That night, as the market quieted and they walked home, Aisha felt proud. She had taken the first step. She had done what many adults feared. She had spoken the truth of her heart. And deep inside she hoped that this simple note, written by a child's hand, would open the door to a new happiness for her mother. The next morning Aisha woke up earlier than usual. Her eyes were still half closed, but her mind was full of excitement. She could not stop thinking about the note she had given Imran the day before. She wondered if he had really read it again when he went home. She wondered if he had smiled the way he smiled at her in the market. She even wondered if he might come to their house and say something to her mother. These thoughts made her heart beat faster. Fatima was busy in the kitchen, boiling water and preparing the small breakfast they usually shared. It was simple bread with a little butter, but she made it warm and fresh. Aisha ate quickly, her eyes shining as if she had a secret. Fatima noticed her daughter's energy and asked, "Why are you in such a hurry today?" Aisha only smiled and said, "Nothing, Mama. I just feel happy." Fatima laughed softly and patted her head, but deep inside, she wondered what her little girl was hiding. When they reached the market and opened the tea stall, Aisha's eyes began to search again. She looked down the road, waiting for the familiar figure of Imran. The morning customers came and went. Old men sat for a while, sipping tea and talking about prices of vegetables. Women came to buy tea before heading to the tailor. Children ran about noisily. But Aisha's eyes were only looking for one person. Finally, she saw him. Imran walked with his calm steps, carrying his bag over his shoulder, the way he always did. He greeted a few people on the way and smiled politely. Aisha's heart filled with courage again. She clutched her marigolds tighter and thought to herself, "Today I will not be shy. Today I will speak to him properly." Imran ordered his tea as usual and sat on the old wooden bench. Fatima poured the tea carefully, as she always did, and handed it to him. They exchanged a few words about the weather and about the school where he taught. Fatima asked him if the children behaved well, and Imran laughed softly, saying, "They behave sometimes, but not always." Aisha giggled at his answer, and that broke the silence between them. She stood close to him, holding her flowers, and whispered shyly, "Sir, did you read my note?" Imran looked at her with gentle eyes and nodded. "Yes, I did. It was very honest and very brave of you to write it." Aisha's cheeks turned red, but she gathered her courage again. "So, will you marry my mother?" she asked in a small but clear voice. Imran was surprised by the direct question, but instead of laughing or refusing, he bent down to her level. "Aisha," he said kindly, "these things take time. I cannot say yes or no so quickly. But I do want to meet your mother properly, not only at the tea stall. Would you like that?" Aisha's eyes sparkled with joy, and she nodded quickly. "Yes, yes, I want that." Fatima, who had heard some of the words, turned to them in surprise. "What are you both whispering about?" she asked, her voice a mix of confusion and curiosity. Imran straightened up and smiled politely. "Nothing serious. Just a small secret with your daughter," he said. But Fatima looked at Aisha, who was smiling too much to hide anything. Fatima's heart told her that something unusual was happening, but she did not press further. Over the next few days, Aisha tried her best to make things happen. She thought like a little captain planning an important mission. She made sure to be near whenever Imran came. She made the stall look neater by arranging the cups and flowers nicely. She even practiced polite sentences in front of the mirror at home, saying, "Sir, please sit here," or, "Sir, do you want more tea?" She wanted Imran to feel welcome, and she wanted her mother to notice him more. Imran, too, began to stay longer at the stall. Instead of finishing his tea in 10 minutes, he would sit for half an hour. He talked about books he had read, about children in his class, and sometimes about his own family who lived in another city. He listened carefully when Fatima spoke about her work, her childhood in a small village, and her dreams of sending Aisha to a good school one day. Aisha watched these conversations with wide eyes. To her, it was like watching a story unfold. She saw how her mother smiled more often when Imran was around. She saw how her mother's voice softened when she spoke to him, and she saw how Imran's eyes always looked kind and respectful. It made her heart dance with hope. One day, Aisha decided she needed to do something more. Just talking and waiting was not enough. She sat at her school desk during break and pulled out a small piece of paper. With her pencil, she began to write carefully. "Sir, my mother is very good. She works hard, she is kind, and she is alone. Please marry her. She needs someone like you." She added a little drawing of a house with smoke coming from the chimney, showing a happy family inside. When she returned to the stall that afternoon, she slipped the note onto the bench where Imran usually sat. When he arrived and saw the paper, he opened it slowly. His face softened as he read the simple words and looked at the childish drawing. He folded the paper again and placed it carefully in his bag. "Thank you, Aisha," he said, his voice gentle. "This means a lot." He did not promise anything, but his eyes showed that he was touched deeply. That evening, after closing the stall, Fatima asked Aisha directly, "What are you doing, my child? What notes are you giving to Mr. Imran?" Aisha looked nervous, but spoke with all her heart. "Mama, he is kind. He talks nicely to you. He makes you smile. I want you to be happy, Mama. I want you to have someone who will take care of you and me." Fatima was silent for a moment. Her eyes filled with tears, not of anger but of sadness mixed with love. She hugged Aisha tightly and said, "You are my brave little one. But marriage is not a game. It is not something decided by a child's wish." Aisha looked up and said firmly, "But sometimes children see what adults cannot. I see that he is right for you." Fatima could not answer. She kissed her daughter's forehead and told her to sleep. But that night, when Fatima lay in bed, she thought about Imran. She remembered his calm way of speaking, his respect, and his patience. She remembered how he once helped an old man cross the road outside the market. She remembered how Aisha's eyes glowed whenever he came. A small seed of thought began to grow in her heart. Meanwhile, Imran too sat in his small rented room. He opened the note again and read the simple words. He thought about Fatima's quiet strength and about Aisha's innocent courage. He smiled to himself, realizing that sometimes children carry the purest wisdom. He told himself that he would visit the stall again the next day. not only for tea but also to speak more with Fatima. For Aisha, this was victory. She had taken another step forward. She lay in bed that night smiling, whispering to herself, "Soon Mama will not be alone anymore. Soon she will smile every day." And with that hope she closed her eyes, ready to dream of a future she believed was already on its way. The days turned into weeks, and the friendship between Fatima, Aisha, and Imran began to grow quietly. It was not loud or dramatic. It was soft, like the sound of rain falling gently on the roof. People in the market started to notice that Imran was visiting the tea stall more often. Some customers whispered among themselves, while others only smiled knowingly. Fatima tried to act as if nothing was different, but deep inside, she felt her life was slowly changing. Imran would come after school hours, sometimes still carrying notebooks filled with his students' lessons. He often placed the books on the table and marked them while drinking tea. Aisha loved these moments because she would sit close and watch him write. Sometimes he showed her small tricks with letters and numbers. He told her stories about famous poets and heroes, and Aisha listened with shining eyes. One afternoon, Imran brought a small gift for Aisha. It was a thin storybook with colorful pictures. "This was my favorite when I was young," he told her. "I hope you like it too." Aisha hugged the book to her chest as if it were treasure. Fatima watched quietly, her heart warming at the kindness Imran showed her daughter. It was not the value of the book that touched her. It was the thought behind it. Another time he came carrying a packet of good tea leaves. "For your stall," he said to Fatima. "This will make your tea even better." Fatima hesitated, unused to accepting help, but he placed it gently on the table and smiled. "It is only tea, nothing more." She finally accepted, thanking him softly. Imran also began to help with small tasks. When one of the wooden poles holding the stall roof became loose, he fixed it with his own hands. When the bench wobbled, he tightened its legs. He never made a show of these acts, but his actions spoke loudly. Fatima, who had carried the weight of everything alone for so long, felt something she had almost forgotten: support. Aisha, clever as always, noticed every detail. She saw how her mother's eyes softened when Imran spoke. She saw how Imran looked at her mother with respect, never rushing, never demanding. To Aisha, it was proof that her dream was coming true, but she also knew adults sometimes hesitated even when something was right in front of them. So she kept pushing gently, making sure Imran felt welcome and her mother felt safe. One evening, as the sun set and the market grew quiet, a man came to the stall holding a paper. It was a notice of an old debt Fatima still owed from years ago when her husband had left. The man demanded payment soon. Fatima's face turned pale, though she tried to hide her worry from Aisha. She folded the paper quickly and said, "Thank you, I will see what I can do." After the man left, she sighed deeply, her shoulders heavy with the weight of the past. Imran, who had been nearby, noticed her troubled face. "Is something wrong?" he asked gently. Fatima shook her head, not wanting to share her burden. But Aisha, too young to hide secrets, looked at Imran and whispered, "Mama has a debt." Fatima gave her a quick look, but it was too late. Imran understood. The next day, without saying much, Imran quietly spoke to the man who had given the notice. He arranged the matter with his own money, not as a favor to show off, but as an act of care. When Fatima found out, she was upset at first. "Why did you do this?" "It was my problem," she said firmly. Imran replied calmly, "Because you do not have to carry everything alone. Sometimes we must let others share the weight." Those words stayed in Fatima's heart long after. She sat awake that night thinking about them. For years she had believed she must be strong on her own, that asking for help was weakness. But here was a man showing her that help could also mean respect, not pity. Slowly she began to trust him more. The market community too started to notice. Women whispered to each other, smiling at the thought that perhaps Fatima would no longer be alone. The older men nodded approvingly, saying Imran seemed like a good man. Nothing was official, but the quiet support of neighbors made the path feel less lonely. Still, Fatima hesitated. Her heart was not young and carefree like Aisha's. She worried about what marriage would mean. Would Imran truly accept her past? Would he be good for Aisha in the long years ahead? Would the world judge her harshly for trying to find happiness again? These questions kept her cautious. Imran, too, carried his own doubts. He had lived alone for many years, and though he wanted companionship, he wondered if he could truly become part of a ready-made family. Could he be a father figure to Aisha? Could he share a life with someone who had already been through so much? He asked himself these questions quietly, though his heart leaned toward yes. In the middle of these adult thoughts, Aisha continued to shine like a small lantern. She did not see debts or doubts. She only saw kindness, laughter, and care. One evening, she arranged the cups at the stall in a neat line, placed marigolds in the middle, and said proudly, "Look, Mama, now it looks like a home table." Imran smiled at her words, and even Fatima laughed. That laughter, simple and shared, felt like a promise of what could be. Another evening, the three of them walked home together. Aisha skipped ahead, humming a tune, while Fatima and Imran walked behind her. The air was cool and the street lamps glowed faintly. For a moment, it looked as though they were already a family. Fatima noticed this too and felt her heart stir, though she kept her thoughts silent. One day, Imran brought a small box of sweets for Aisha. "For my little teacher," he said, smiling. "Because you are teaching me how to be brave." Aisha laughed, not fully understanding but happy all the same. Fatima's eyes filled with tears she quickly wiped away. Slowly, step by step, life was changing. Fatima found herself waiting for Imran's visits, though she pretended not to. She began to share stories of her past she had never told anyone. Imran listened patiently, never judging, only nodding with quiet understanding. Aisha felt proud every time she saw them talk like that. The tea stall, once only a place of survival, now became a place of warmth. Customers noticed the difference. They said the tea tasted sweeter, though Fatima never changed her recipe. Perhaps it was not the tea, but the feeling of hope that flavored everything. But even as things grew brighter, both Fatima and Imran still held back from speaking openly about the future. They were like two rivers flowing side by side, waiting for the courage to join into one. Aisha, watching them, knew that her work was not finished yet. She had started the journey, but she would need to give another small push, one that might finally bring their hearts together. That night, as she lay in bed with her flowers on the table beside her, Aisha whispered to herself, "One day soon, Mama will not have to be alone anymore. One day soon she will laugh every night." With that thought, she closed her eyes, believing strongly that her dream was closer than ever. The festival season came to town, and the whole market prepared for it with excitement. Bright lamps were hung across the streets, stalls were decorated with colorful cloth, and the smell of sweet fried dough filled the air. Children practiced songs for the stage, and old men polished their drums for the evening performances. For Aisha, this festival felt different from all the others she had seen. She had a plan in her heart, and she was sure this was the right time to make it happen. That morning, she woke up earlier than usual. She gathered marigolds into a small basket and told her mother, "Mama, today you must come with me to the festival. Don't say no." Fatima smiled tiredly, saying she had too much work at the stall, but Aisha insisted. "Just for one evening, Mama, please, everyone will be there." Her voice carried such hope that Fatima finally agreed. By afternoon, the market was glowing. Families walked around happily, children laughed, and music floated through the air. The tea stall was busy, but Fatima closed it earlier than usual, something she had not done in years. Aisha held her hand tightly as they walked to the festival square. And just as she had wished, Imran was there too. He had come to see his students perform on stage. Aisha ran to him and pulled his hand, bringing him toward her mother. "Come, sir. We will all sit together," she said cheerfully. Imran laughed and agreed. Fatima tried to hide her shy smile, but her heart beat faster when she saw him standing beside her in the crowd. For the first time in many years, she felt like she was part of something bigger than just survival. The square was alive with music and dance. Children sang songs, lamps twinkled like stars, and vendors sold sweets wrapped in paper. Aisha stood between her mother and Imran, holding their hands tightly as if she was the bridge connecting them. The warmth of their hands gave her courage. She knew what she had to do. When one of the teachers invited children to share something on the stage, Aisha raised her hand boldly. She climbed onto the small wooden stage, holding her basket of marigolds. The crowd smiled at the sight of the little girl standing bravely under the bright lamps. She looked around, saw her mother and Imran in the front, and took a deep breath. "My name is Aisha," she began in her small but clear voice. "I want to say something today. My mama works very hard. She makes tea for everyone and always smiles, but sometimes she is very tired. She is the best mama in the world, but she is alone. The crowd grew quiet, listening. Fatima's heart raced as tears filled her eyes. Aisha continued, her words simple but strong. This man, Sir Imran, comes to our stall. He is kind to my mama. He helps her and he makes her laugh. I think he is perfect for her. I want him to marry my mama, so she will not be alone anymore. The crowd gasped softly, then broke into gentle laughter and applause. Some elders nodded their heads, touched by the innocence of the child's wish. Fatima covered her face in embarrassment, but her tears were flowing freely. Imran stood frozen for a moment, then slowly smiled. He looked at the little girl on the stage and felt his heart melt. One of the elders in the crowd, an old man with a white beard, spoke loudly. Child, you are braver than all of us. Sometimes adults hide their feelings, but children see the truth. May God bless you. The people clapped again, this time louder, and Aisha's face glowed with pride. She climbed down from the stage and ran back to her mother and Imran. She held both their hands again and said firmly, Now you must say something. Please don't be silent anymore. Imran bent down to her level, his eyes warm and full of respect. Aisha, you are the most honest child I have ever met. You have spoken what was in your heart, and I cannot ignore that. Then he stood up and turned to Fatima. His voice was calm but carried the weight of truth. Fatima, I was waiting for the right time to say this. Your daughter has given me the courage. Will you allow me to walk beside you in life? Will you let me be part of your world? The whole square grew silent, waiting for Fatima's answer. She stood there, her hands trembling, her heart beating faster than ever. For years she had dreamed of support, of companionship, but fear had always stopped her. Now, in front of the entire community, her daughter's brave words had pushed her to the edge of a decision. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she looked at Imran. I don't know if I deserve this. I have only struggled and survived. But I cannot deny that your kindness has touched me. I need time, Imran. Time to think, to be sure. Her voice shook, but her honesty was clear. Imran nodded respectfully. You deserve every happiness, Fatima. I can wait as long as you need. His words were steady, without pressure, and that made her heart feel lighter. The people in the crowd clapped again, this time not for Aisha's innocence, but for the honesty between two adults. The elder man smiled and said, Take your time, daughter. Love is not a race. But know this, happiness is not a sin. You have every right to choose it. The festival continued, with music and laughter filling the air again. But for Fatima, Imran, and Aisha, the night had already changed everything. It was not a proposal sealed with rings, nor a promise written in stone. But it was the beginning of something real, something hopeful. As they walked home after the festival, Aisha skipped ahead, humming happily. Fatima and Imran walked side by side, both quiet but thoughtful. The lamps behind them lit the street, and their shadows stretched long on the ground. For the first time, Fatima did not feel completely alone in the darkness. That night, as she lay in bed, she replayed the scene in her mind. Her daughter's brave words, the support of the crowd, and Imran's steady voice all filled her heart. She did not have an answer yet, but she knew one thing. Her heart was no longer closed. It was opening slowly, like a flower after years of cold. Imran, in his small room, also thought of the evening. He smiled as he remembered Aisha standing on the stage, holding marigolds and speaking with such courage. That little girl is stronger than all of us, he whispered to himself. And he knew, deep in his heart, that he was ready to wait, to prove his sincerity with patience and care. For Aisha, sleep came easily. She hugged her basket of marigolds and whispered to herself, I did it. Mama will not be alone anymore. She believed that her wish had already started to come true. The festival became a memory for the whole town, a story people would tell for years. The story of a little girl who stood on a stage and begged for her mother's happiness. It was simple, innocent, and pure, but it touched everyone who heard it. And so the path for Fatima and Imran was no longer hidden. It was open, though still uncertain. The next steps would be slow, full of learning and trust. But the first stone had been placed not by the adults, but by the small hands of a child who dared to dream of a family. The months after the festival passed quietly but beautifully. Life in the market went on as usual. People bought vegetables, children ran through the streets, and vendors shouted their prices. But something was different around the tea stall. The air felt lighter, warmer and more hopeful. Fatima still worked hard every morning, pouring tea and greeting customers, but now there was a softness in her eyes. She did not notice it herself, but others did. People whispered that her smile had grown wider since the night of the festival. Imran continued to visit the stall regularly. He was careful, never rushing things, never pushing Fatima for an answer. He knew her heart needed time. Instead, he showed his care in small and steady ways. He helped her carry heavy boxes when new supplies came. He made repairs whenever something broke. He listened when she spoke about her childhood, her dreams for Aisha, and even her fears. These little acts were not loud declarations of love, but they spoke more loudly than any grand promise. Aisha was the happiest of them all. To her, everything already felt like a family. She would walk to the market holding her mother's hand, then run ahead to greet Imran, calling out, "Sir, you are here." She liked to sit between them whenever they talked. She liked to watch them share tea together. At night, she would tell her mother, "See, Mama? He is perfect for us." Fatima would laugh gently and kiss her forehead, but in her heart she knew her daughter's words carried truth. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange, Imran joined them for dinner at their small home. It was the first time he had stepped inside. Fatima laid out rice, lentils, and a few vegetables, apologizing that it was simple. But Imran smiled and said, "Simple food tastes best when it is made with love." Aisha clapped her hands happily at his words. They ate together at the small wooden table, laughing at little jokes and sharing stories. For a brief moment, Fatima felt what she had long forgotten, a complete home. Still, doubt sometimes visited her heart. At night, when the house grew quiet, she asked herself questions. Could she really take this step again? Would the past return to hurt her? Would people judge her for choosing happiness after so many years of struggle? These thoughts made her hesitate. But then she remembered Imran's steady eyes, his respectful words, and the way he cared for Aisha as if she were his own. Slowly, those doubts began to fade. Imran, too, spent many evenings thinking. He knew marriage was not just about two people. It was about building a life together, raising a child, and sharing every joy and every burden. He asked himself if he was ready for such responsibility. And each time he thought of Fatima's quiet strength and Aisha's innocent courage, his heart gave him the same answer: yes. The market neighbors grew fond of the bond forming between them. Some teased Aisha playfully, asking, "So, when will we hear the wedding bells?" She would answer boldly, "Soon." "Very soon?" Fatima would blush and scold her gently, but Imran would only smile. The whole community, it seemed, was waiting for the moment to come. Finally, one morning, after months of waiting and watching, Imran gathered his courage. He came to the tea stall earlier than usual, carrying a small box. Aisha spotted him and ran up, asking, "What is this, sir?" "Is it sweets?" Imran laughed and said, "Something sweeter than sweets." He sat down on the bench and waited until Fatima came over. She was surprised to see him looking so serious. He stood, holding the small box in his hands. "Fatima," he began softly, "I have waited because I wanted you to feel sure. I have tried to show you with actions, not just words, how much I respect and care for you and Aisha. Today I want to ask you again, not as a rushed question but as a promise. Will you allow me to be your partner in life? Will you let me be a father to Aisha and a husband to you?" The market grew quiet around them, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Fatima's eyes filled with tears. For a moment she was silent, her hands trembling. Then she looked at Aisha, who stood smiling with all her heart, and at Imran, whose eyes were steady with sincerity. The answer that had been sleeping in her heart finally woke. "Yes," she whispered, then more firmly, "Yes, Imran, I will marry you." The market burst into applause. Customers clapped, neighbors cheered, and even the vendors laughed joyfully. Aisha jumped up and down, shouting, "Mama said yes. Mama said yes." She ran to hug Imran and Fatima together, wrapping her small arms around them both. It was the moment she had dreamed of, and now it was real. The wedding was simple but beautiful. It was held in the market square where everyone had first heard Aisha's brave plea. Fatima wore a modest dress, her hair covered with a bright scarf. Imran wore a plain suit. There were no expensive decorations, only marigolds gathered by Aisha and lamps hung by the neighbors. But the air was filled with warmth, love, and blessings. During the ceremony, the elder of the town smiled and said, This marriage was not made by chance. It was made by the honesty of a child, the patience of a man, and the courage of a woman. May it always be strong. Everyone nodded, agreeing with his words. Aisha stood proudly beside her mother, wearing a little flower crown. She felt like the happiest child in the world. She had begged for her mother's happiness, and now she was seeing it come true before her eyes. After the wedding, life slowly settled into a new rhythm. Imran continued teaching at the school, but now he also helped Fatima at the stall when he had free time. Together they expanded the stall into something bigger. With his help and her hard work, it became more successful. Customers came not only for tea but also to enjoy the warm atmosphere of the family working together. At home, things changed too. There was laughter at the dinner table every night. Aisha showed Imran her schoolwork proudly, and he helped her with lessons. Fatima no longer carried the burden alone. She had a partner who shared her worries and her joys. The house, once filled with silence, now echoed with conversation and gentle laughter. Of course, life was not perfect. There were still bills to pay, chores to do, and challenges to face. But now those challenges were faced together. Fatima realized that happiness was not about a life without problems. It was about having someone beside you to face them with courage and love. The story of Fatima, Imran, and Aisha became well known in the town. People often said, it was the little girl who gave them courage. She saw the truth before anyone else. Aisha grew proud of this story, knowing she had played a part in changing her mother's life. One evening, months after the wedding, as the family sat outside their home watching the stars, Aisha leaned against her mother and whispered, "Mama, I told you he was perfect." Fatima laughed softly and kissed her daughter's head. "Yes, my child, you were right." Imran smiled and said, "And I am the luckiest man because of you both." The stars shone brightly above, as if blessing their new life. And in that moment, the little girl's wish was complete. Her mother was no longer alone, and their small family had become whole.